Hi, and welcome to another episode of IGN House Call, where we sort of, call people up from their homes because we need it. If not, we'll end up, playing around with our facial hair and stuff and whatnot. Today, on this interview, we have Gwen Foster, who is also dubbed as the mother of game development in the Philippines. Hi, Gwen. Thank you for coming.
Hello, thank you. I'm Gwen. I work as I work with Robot Teddy doing business development and production, which is a boutique firm and agency, specifically in games consulting. And then I am part of the board for IGDA Philippines. I have a new role with IGDA, which is exciting. That would come out, I think, first week of May. And then I also have served for 2 years as part of the executive committee at Global Game Jam.
Tell us more about your journey into the video games industry as a developer.
So at first, I started just making games for fun. So like joining game jams and then volunteering here and there. And then eventually I worked as QA in Game Loft. Then after a few years, I landed a couple of producer roles in a bunch of independent or kickstarted game studios. And then from there, I ended up where I am right now and doing business development and production at Robot Teddy. It's been fun, honestly. I do programming on the side. I mostly make games for myself and for the people that I work with. So that's been fun.
What's it like to organize the IGDA for the Like, what were some of the things you discovered from indie developers in the country?
So the thing with IGDA is we mostly focus on individual development of game developers in the country. It's not necessarily limited to just independent developers. To cater to the indie developers, me and a couple of friends of mine actually run Indie Fiesta, which is a game showcase during ESGS, which is one of the biggest Southeast Asian consumer game summit. So that takes care of the indie part. As for the IGDA, what we really do is that we organize a lot of meetups called Game Dev Drink Ups, where it's not necessarily alcoholic. Sometimes we just have milk tea and then iced tea, fishbowl iced tea. And it's a cool way for everybody from B2B art outsourcing indies to just hang out and build genuine relationship. And then it's also sometimes people hire people there. That's how they find their hires. And then what I think one of the things that we do for IGDA is that we're organizing a job fair, which started last year. So it's a way for people who want to break into the industry to find jobs in established studios locally. So another thing that we've been doing when I started my term as board for IGDA is we organize monthly meetups where we focus on one aspect of game development, whether it's production, business, publishing, programming. So we organize workshops, and then in those things, we've seen some people take inspiration from there and then eventually make their own games or build better relationships with other people, so that 6 months or a year later on we find out that they've now become really good friends who would just talk privately and share all of this information. So IGDA has been fun because you just act as a catalyst for all of these developers, and then you see them nurture and grow, which I feel that's what IGDA should do for the local games industry, is to encourage individual game developers to really just be their best self. As for the things I've discovered with indie developers, and this is mostly through the work with Indie Festa, a lot of people always think that the Philippines is, just Manila. But some of the games that I really love, like I love Mayari, which is from Ingenuity Games. That's a game studio in Davao, which is south of the Philippines. There's also like some indie developers that I've never met who I've heard of their games from people internationally that they're also not in Manila. And so those things, like I found a game through IMGA called Appser, from the studio Appser, and then they make really good games. So there's a lot of things that I discover through the different works or the different facets of the stuff that I do.
Right. So, in your experience, what does it take to create and curate a community of developers in a region?
I think one of the things, and I get asked this a lot because we do seem like we have a lot of developers. Like every time it's Global Game Jam, when I started, there was just one site, which was 10 years ago. I think almost 10 years ago. And then now, I think this year, I think we have like 8. Oh, sorry, Kat.
Oh, wow. Special guest.
Commercial break.
Special guest. And now I think we have like 8 to 12 sites like a year. It goes up and down in different parts. A lot of people who want to start communities or game development hubs always asking like, how do we do it? And the honest thing is with that is just do it every month. Start making a habit of it. Don't get discouraged when just like 10 people show up. Like we've had 2 or 3 events where there were just like 8 people, because that's still means to build genuine relationship. And then down the line, because we've been doing this for almost this is our 3rd year with IGDA, that now every time like we do something, like the last meetup we had to before everything happened, we had like 80 people show up, even though we announced the event 2 days before.
Ooh.
So that was crazy. And I was like, it doesn't matter if it's just 5 people that show up. We've experienced that in the past, but to see like 80 people show up because we've been doing it consistently for the past 3 years. That's I think people just assume that you're gonna okay, I want to build a community, and then everybody should get excited, but the reality is that it takes a lot of hard work. It takes like a lot of people who genuinely want to learn, who genuinely want to maintain their relationship. And I think for a lot of game developers, usually these are their only social interactions, like it is for me. So yeah, it takes a lot of patience, and takes a lot of consistency. And now that everything is going digital, I feel like there's so many digital hubs and spaces internationally. I think game developers everywhere should look for these hubs and then join. So yeah.
How much has the industry grown since you first started?
So I think I started, almost a decade ago. Like I got exposed to the game industry when I was still in university because my partner at the time is into games. And during that time, like every time we would go to a meetup, it was just drinking and alcohol. And then there are some workshops here and there, but mostly because you don't necessarily have the expertise at that time. I think that's one of We have, I think for the Philippines, we had Anino who created Anito that won an IGF. I don't know, it was back in 2002 or 2003. And that was pretty much about it, because like we just had outsourcing studios in Cebu who did a lot of stuff for Japanese companies. We did have like some of them also in Manila. And during that time, you had essentially nobody doing games. Like, you know, from counting your hands who were doing game development. And now, honestly, like sometimes I get surprised, like even on Facebook, that some people actually know who we are. Because I don't know if it's in the same in other regions, but there's just not so much mainstream exposure of local developers in the region, I feel. And like it doesn't, the media is always like, you know, games are violent, or, you know, games cause addiction, stuff like that. And then to see like some people actually know the games, and then now like when we have a meetup, it's more of like, who do we want to speak, rather than can you speak? So or can you learn this so that we have something to talk about? We actually now have people who are doing it in practice. I think for Indie Fiesta, when we started almost 6 years ago, there were just 20 developers, and like down to the day before, we were having trouble filling up the slots, even though we only had 20 slots for the game exhibit. And then last year, we actually had, I think, 60 or 80 people showcasing. In just 5 years, from, you know, begging people to, could you showcase your game, and then, you know, let's try this thing, I don't know if it's gonna work, to last year where people were just submitting, and we actually had to choose the games to showcase, because and the quality of games also has gotten so much better these days. I think that says a lot. Like I know Malaysian games, for example, have actually gone beyond like my expectations. So yeah, like it's grown so much over the 5 years. I think that the internet and technology helps a lot, but it's also that, you know, when we were starting, we barely had anybody that we could ask, like other than some forums or anything. And now, you know, you could just like tweet somebody, or, you know, go to an event or Google something, and then it shows up. So I think that also helped a lot with how the industry is growing.
Right. Okay, so do you still see Southeast Asia becoming the next major gaming hub in the world?
Honestly, gaming-wise, we are the top for mobile gaming, I feel. Like, we do have, like, you know, Mobile Legends, AOV before. And then, like, we have such a tight, in terms of Southeast Asia becoming a gaming hub, I feel like Southeast Asian people have this wider range or wider game literacy. It's not so much a case of, you know, PC master race versus mobile games. Like, you have everybody who, you know, some people, I'm gonna sound so old, like some people are playing Clash of Clans or Candy Crush on their phones, or, you know, some people are like doing Apple Arcade. And there's not so much discrimination about what tool you use to play the game. In terms of game development, this is gonna sound bad, but I feel like the reason why we have a lot of art outsourcing studios in the region is because we are cheaper labor. And honestly, Sony establishing a first-party studio in Malaysia is such a big deal. Like, Ubisoft establishing a studio both in Singapore and in the Philippines is also a big deal, because then, maybe these major studios are recognizing that we do have creative talent, and it's just a matter of we didn't have the opportunities or the resources to, be at the same level as the AAA companies. And in terms of indie game development, Indonesia has had and will always have a healthy, ecosystem of games that come out, that have heart, that are good strategy games like Necronator. And you have Vietnam and Thailand who makes really good mobile games. So Taiwan, I feel, should be included in Southeast Asia just to cheat, because they make their own, like, honestly, they have the most mature games industry, I feel, because games like Citus, what was that, Fight of the Gods, funny the fighting game, the controversial fighting game, and then the tension, I feel, and they have their own ecosystem also of mobile games that's self-sustaining. So yeah, I feel that what makes Malaysia now super successful is that the government has been super supportive. Like MDEC does so much good work. Singapore, Riot is now opening in Singapore, which I think is really good for the region, because that means that everybody from Southeast Asia can go to Singapore and then join Riot, which I think has gotten so much better in terms of their practices, and for them to actually consider making a studio at Singapore, that's great. So yeah, I feel like now in AAA standpoint, we've always had good developers, we've always had great gamers. I think in Dota, there's always been one Filipino team, or Fnatic. Did I say right? Fnatic trains in Malaysia or something. So we have been a gaming hub, and I think the world should just recognize it. It's not just Korea or China. We have so many great gamers, and Filipinos are big trash talkers. So just in game, but yeah, I feel like we already are, and I feel like we should just start owning it, because we just have so much talent here.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Unfortunately, we don't have much time left. So,
no.
But before we kind of wrap things up, do you have anything? What are you working on right now, or do you have anything that you want to say to the people watching?
So I work at Super Hot Presents. I think funding weird niche experimental games has been one of the things that I'm really passionate about. So you can check that out at Super Hot Presents, if you just look it up. And then we are working, me and my friends are working on a silly cooking game. And then a couple of friends of mine are also working on a collaborative regional project where we make games inspired by other mediums. It's called Rising Sea. It's gonna come out, I think, in the next few months. So that's gonna be interesting, because I think it's one of our first regional collaborations for making games. And then I guess in terms of advice for up and coming developers in the region, honestly, just do it. A lot of programmers say this, a lot of artists say this, nothing's perfect. The code is shitty, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just make sure it works. It will bug even though it's theoretically correct anyway. There's so many ways and avenues to do stuff now. It's a matter of you deciding whether or when you want to do it.
Right. Good advice.
I know, another cat might come.
All right. So thank you again for making the time for this. It was actually really fun and great talking to you. For those watching at home, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Also, check out all the works that that Gwen's working on right now, because it sounds really great. Sounds really cool. And we'll all see you guys again next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.